I am your brother in Christ, and welcome. So today will be an interesting one. Hopefully this will be an open conversation. I've invited over 100 people on Twitter that I've never met before to come join us. So we'll see how that works, if they join us or not. So the concept is hashtag Free Palestine is wrong. And I'm open to hearing others' opinions if they agree or disagree. The link should be pinned in the live chat. Let me check that, make sure that's still up. Yes, it is. Refresh that and make sure. Look good. So we're all set there. Fantastic. So if you have your opinion one way or the other, you are invited to come join us, to come talk. I have multiple guests that will be joining us periodically. It says that hashtag Free Palestine is still wrong, but I can still change your mind. You're more than welcome to come on up here and talk about it. That's what I mean. This is open dialogue, open live stream. Everyone can join. Thank you for the super chat there. It says, God bless you, brothers and sisters. So fantastic. My wife is available there in the live chat. She is unfortunately not going to be able to join me today. She is not feeling the best. So please keep her in your guys' prayers. So, first of all, it's this whole thing around Palestine. What is going on over there? Constant fighting, all the time fighting. But that goes back to the roots of the matter, don't it? So we will have some fun there. Free Palestine is totally wrong. Again, Truth Watch, you are more than welcome to come on here and give your opinions. This is not limited to one or the other side. It is open to both sides of the conversation, and then we can talk from there. So, oh my goodness, you guys, we got 17 guys out there already. That's fantastic. So we'll go over, if no one ends up joining, we'll go ahead and go over a little bit of history around Israel, around that Middle Eastern area. We'll talk about that and break it down. So let's go ahead. See what is happening here. So make sure you guys participate in the poll I have out there. If you guys, where you guys shared this video and on what platforms. So I'm often curious about that itself. Here, and prep this real quick. We're good to go. So fantastic. So the history around Israel is Discord. Someone popped on and said Discord. No. So yeah, it's been highly contested for quite some time. I do have some statistics on that end of it. Again, welcome to come on, have a conversation, and see where we're at. There's no Palestine, they say. Well, there is some history of the word Palestine being used. But as far as an independent nation, not so much. So good luck on that one being stated. So, of course, this is a very hot topic right about now. Hey, Warrior Woman, welcome. The next Zucker Nike, which we always have fun with. He's in the chat there. So if we roll back, go back through the history of Palestine, that sort of area, long before it was ever, the word Palestine ever existed, even before Israel was founded, we had ourselves a bit of a, it was only city-states in that area prior to that. Now we had the world disaster on that scale, the biggest one that we know of to that point, which was the late Bronze Age collapse. We had a bunch of raiders come in from the sea. We're not sure where they came from, but they just all of a sudden popped up with black sails and started raiding. We have notes in Egypt from that. It's well documented, just not documented where they came from. Right there is where we have Israel coming into the Promised Land and being founded right after that. So you have the Bronze Age collapse, massive famine, massive raids by these sea folk coming in, taking the land, raiding things, and then you have Israel come up and establish their nation there. There were city-states in the area beforehand, but no real people exist from that we know of. I mean, there must be some people that have their heritage back to that, but not a nation group that currently exists anymore. So we have Israel established. That was in 1200 BC. Then we have the first temple built in 957 BC. Then we have our first little conflict, which was I say little, but it's a massive deal, which was how many ships did we send? There weren't any ships. You're talking about the sea people. They were massive numbers, but we just don't know where they came from. They just popped up one day on the border, and it was crazy. So we have the Assyrian invasion, and they came in, they took the Israelites, they conquered. Then we have the Babylonians come in 586 BC. And then we have finally the return in 515 BC by the Jews into the Promised Land again, and the construction of the Second Temple. After that, seemed pretty stable. There was still some infighting, but eventually the Greeks came in, took it, and then the Romans took it from them in 63 BC. So, and then the temple is destroyed. Now that we went past the point of Christ, we're now at the temple. So we're still we're over 1,200 years into this journey through this. So we've now crossed Jesus' time. We're at 70 AD. That's the destruction of the temple. And then about 136 AD. So 136 AD, we find the first references to Palestine, which is what the Romans called it after a specifically bad rebellion from the Jews. They were trying to smack them down. Instead of calling it Israel, they renamed it and smacked on the name Palestine. So there we go. We're already, from beginning to end, over 1,300 years since the founding of Israel, when we got to this point where we see this label Palestine put onto it. So after that, we have continuing on this journey. So the Jews still controlled it under the Roman Empire. I kind of included the time the Roman Empire owned it because they were really a vassal state underneath them. They had a lot of autonomy when it came to a lot of their practices, but still had to pay back. They still had to pay tribute. They still had to do a lot of the Roman laws because they were underneath Rome. So finally, in 343 AD, Christianity took over. By that, I mean they simply just converted the Roman Empire, and because they converted the Roman Empire, they took over. So non-violent on the Christian behalf, but quite violent on the pagan behalf on that one. So then we'll go ahead and fast on forward to the Muslims. Finally, they show up. That's really where we are at. The two major powers that are really being put to play here are the Christians, Islam, and the Jews. So those are the three major powers that are fighting over the Palestine region area. So Islam comes and they take over. They invade in 636 AD. So they come in, it's bloody, it's forced conversion. It's not a nice situation. Muhammad had already died before this point. And I think a lot of the conquering was under the second rightly guided caliph, if memory serves. Fast forward, the Muslim invasion also entailed a lot of jihads, multiple jihads launched against the Christians and the Jews. Over 400 years after that point, we get our First Crusade coming back in, and the Christians take the land back from the Muslims at that point. And then in 1291 AD, the Muslims under the Malakek, if I'm saying that right, I'm probably butchering the snot out of that. That group came in, took over, and then held it for a while until the Ottomans invaded and conquered again in 1517. We eventually have the Christians come back to take control. By Christians, I mean the Western nations that were Christian founded in 1918. So that's after World War I. We beat back the Ottomans, who allied with the Germans and Austria-Hungary at the time, and we took over that area. And at that point, we started talking about having the Jews come in. There's a bunch of negotiations back and forth, trying to work alongside the Muslims in the area, as well as getting the Jews down there. A lot of sanctions, a lot of back and forth. But 1948 is when we finally have Israel is established. So Israel is now there. It is 100% established and independent. So, and then that leads us to today. Of course, that was the establishment of Israel was after we had World War II, and we all know how that went for the Jews. So, who has the right to the land? That's the question. That's the question I'd like to ask anyone. My wife reminded me it was a second wrongly guided caliph. I just refer to it as that because that's what all the documentation refers to them as. Of course, because it's Muslim documentation. So, like I said, the question is, who has the right to the land? And I would love to have someone come up and give me their opinions on which way it is. So you have a couple of options. In my mind, there are three options. You have the natives who established the first actual kingdom in that area. They have the right to the land. Going back to the whole concept of that seems the left group in the United States is pushing heavily, where it's like these are taken lands, so we must give it back to the natives. So giving it back to the natives is option one. Option two is the right of the conqueror, who, hey, they took the land, we won the battle, we get to decide what happens to the land, basically. And option three, who has had it the longest, if you want to play that game. Who controlled it the longest between the three groups? That is the question. David on YouTube says we should give it back to the sea people. Well, the problem is they came and they left, and we have no clue about them at all. It is really odd. We don't have a lot of history from that time period, but that's not to be too terribly surprising. War is always a hard topic. Yes, there are unfortunately casualties. I remember the quote from The Patriot, which I thought was a really well done quote, where he said that they're talking about going to war with Great Britain. well, not Great Britain at the time, but against England. And they said, you know what? The main character stood up, said, hey, if we do this, basically, and I'm going to misquote this, it's not going to be fought over there. It's going to be fought here. Our sons and daughters are going to learn with it with their own eyes, and the innocent shall die with the rest of us. And that's the sum total of any war that's ever been. There's always been innocents that have got caught in the crossfire. That is unfortunately part of it, but it's extremely different from targeting innocents and having an accidental situation. So, see, so far no one's come along, so I'm going to end up needing to take a next step. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Goes through some. I either have the option to go through some Twitter, or I can go through some Islamic sources on this topic, because again, as you can see worldwide, Muslims are the majority of the supporters of Free Palestine. The rest are individuals that I would argue are a bit on the brainwashed side. But that's just my opinion. So 1 second here. Let you guys respond to that. So I go to Twitter, or should I just go into the Islamic sources and then into Twitter? Because I'll go on there and I'll talk about the posts that we have on Twitter under the hashtag Free Palestine, and then talk to them about coming on here and invite them on. Sort of the same thing we did whenever we had Roe v. Wade overturned. I thought that led to some really good conversations. So again, this live stream is open to anyone in the live chat. You're more than welcome to come along and join us. Join me on this journey and give your opinions. I promise not to be too harsh on you. Maybe a little bit, but not too harsh. So let's go ahead and switch on over. Who does the Holy Lands really belong to? That's the question, and that's why I gave you those three options, how you can look at it. If you guys have another way of looking at it, I'm more than open to hearing that as well. But those seem to be the most obvious options, at least in my mind. So this is a bit more of a relaxed, like unstructured live stream here. So let's see here. Where are you at, Jess? Oh, is that referring to when we did this on the Roe v. Wade situation? The person named Jess came along, and we ended up having a wonderful conversation with. So I hope that's what that's referring to. I wish she was still around. I haven't seen her before in a long time since we've done that live stream, but she would be more than welcome to join us for this one if they so desire. So let's see here. So as far as the Islamic sources go, plain and simple, the part the Muslims will dislike the most is when I point to them. When I actually read their Islamic sources, they get a little upset about that part. So very simple. It paints it pretty clear. You got Quran 9:29 that says fight against the Jews and non-believers, kill them until they are either enslaved or convert. You have 9:30, Quran 9:30, that tells you exactly why, because of and it describes what they think Christians and Jews believe, and that's why they should be executed or enslaved. And at the end of that, of course, they declare Allah destroyed them, which again isn't very nice. So that's the backing of the mentality of Hamas in this. And if you've seen my videos up to this point, you'd be familiar with how I think we should deal with them. Putting it very nicely. in a non-violent, non-brutal way. Of course, then that is all in line with Quran 98:6, where it says that all Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures, period. Which isn't very nice to say, because if I said Muhammad is a pig, there would be a lot of Muslims that would be very upset with me. But when the Quran says that I am worse than all creatures, that's not supposed to be insulting. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. So let me see. Let me copy my invite that's got the live stream chat links all ready to go. Let me go ahead and refresh Twitter under the hashtag, and I'll pull that up on the screen, and we will see if anyone has the guts to come join us, which I would be really interested in having a conversation. Now, I will warn you that there might be graphic imagery here because I have no clue what is being posted on Twitter at this point about this. So I'll just scroll through and see if there's any that seem to be interesting and share it with you guys. Of course, L says, read my option 4. It requires me to have actually seen it, which I don't do very good. Hey, David. Welcome.
Hey, what's up?
It's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. This is a cool topic for the stream, very important one.
I am actually surprised that you have come to join us.
Yes, I'm about to be driving on my way, but I thought it'd be cool to talk on my way. I won't be looking at the screen, of course, because of driving and safety reasons, but I think it'd be good to talk through this one, and I'll probably be hopping in later as well to come back through, but I was just looking through my list of citations and links and sources on the history of Palestine and Islam. It's something, man. It is something else.
There's a lot there, yeah. So Here is, of course, for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, you're not cool. So if you're cool, you would have already seen this on Reasoned Answers channel. David S. just did a live stream yesterday that was over 5 hours long. So congratulations on your endurance.
Yeah, that one was fun. That was with Anam, and it was a good discussion on the nature of beauty, which actually I do think that plays quite heavily into this situation, even though it might not look like it at first. But as I was thinking on the argument for beauty as it points to God's existence, I realized that in Islam, they can't really make an argument for God's beauty, at least in a consistent way. And oddly enough, what's happening by Hamas right now is part of the reason for that. You see, Muslims are in a bit of a predicament. Many Muslims, by the way, just to be clear, many Muslims want the argument for beauty to work. When the argument works, when you say, oh, we know objective beauty, therefore we know the nature of God, therefore God exists because we know the nature of objective beauty. It's a powerful argument, and oh, thank you. Yeah, that's so sweet. Yeah, they were there. That's right.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
It was fun, but I think Muslims really, in their heart, they want that argument to work for Islam. But here's the sad truth: it just can't, because Muslims have to find a way to reconcile the fact that their prophet did all the things that he did, and that their Islamic history, be it the fact that Muslim Arabic history is a history of colonization, taking land from other people. I love that dude. I think that guy
I just had to add that in there when he said they have to deal with these issues. I'm like, yeah, well, there's an explanation. If you guys are not familiar with that, go look it up on Twitter.
It's beautiful.
Hilarious.
It's one of those cathartic experiences. Yet it's exactly one of the things I was thinking about. Oh, hello.
Hey, Radar, welcome.
He's muted right now, but
Oh, hey, what's
there
up,
he is.
everybody?
There you go.
How's everyone
All the
doing?
official. Good.
All's
Good to see
well.
you guys.
Whew. We were just talking a bit about the struggles of Islam when it comes to discussions of beauty, since they have to reconcile beauty with the horror that they see
Yeah.
through their clearly colonizer-focused mentality, which has plagued all of Arabic Muslim history, be it the colonization of the land of Palestina, as the Romans called it, in 138 AD, after they kicked many of the Jewish people out post-revolt. And then, of course, nobody actually ever recognized Palestine as an ethnic name or ethnic consideration, but as a regional and geographic name. But then, you skip a couple empires forward after Muslims take different lands from different people as acting as colonizers that colonize different lands, which we know to be the case. And I'm using the word colonial and colonizing on purpose because that's obviously being leveled against Israel as a colonizer state or whatever people might throw against it, even though we know this applies to Arab groups far more consistently. And then you have to reconcile what happens in the process of colonialization by Arab Muslim groups constantly, be it not just the taking of land, but of course the raping of women, the taking of children as sex captives as well. And you have to reconcile this with Islam being a religion of peace, which is different.
That's a bit of a challenge.
It's interesting. For me, it seems that the peaceful Muslim that lives, that you go to work with, or the Muslim that your kid plays with at school and his parents, and these are typically, in my opinion, my understanding, the radical Muslims, right? Radical Islam. Because if they're true to their text and if they're true to the hadith and the expectations of their insane prophet, they would have to be very militant and violent against people, right? I think the difficulty is when you look at the Hebrew Bible and you see that similar things, not similar and not exactly the similar, but one could charge the Hebrew Bible with similar things. The difference is, what is the real revelation of God, and who's being used as God's hammer at a point in time, right? Whether it's Assyria, Babylon, these other nations that even conquered Israel because of her rebellion. And so it's interesting conversations when you look at this, and it doesn't really jive or fit with the totality of everything it's saying, right? With what Islam preaches, what Islam is doing. And this is the same thing with the rabbinic Judaism, brother in Christ, the sound bites of 21st century Judaism don't match their sources, right?
Yeah.
And the sound bites of modern Islam that says, hey, we're peace and Islam is peace and we just want peace and these things, it doesn't match their sources. And so we find that I believe the same spirit is there, right? The same spirit behind this thing. It's no different. So.
No, I agree with you. In fact, I would disagree on finding similar things. The major difference between the Old Testament, what we find there as far as the commands of going in, wiping these people out or throwing them out of the land, is it's always extremely limited. There's always a limiting factor there, where if you look at the Quran and the Hadith, you don't have that. There's no limiting factor. It's worldwide. Go wipe these people out. So that does make a huge difference.
No, I think it totally does. And what I'm saying is someone could charge with it being the same, right? Is what I'm saying. Someone would charge.
Deal with people
with saying, hey,
that.
Exactly. And of course it doesn't fit, right? These things are temporal. And what's interesting, even though God did give command to wipe out everyone who lived in Canaan, they still didn't do that. Right. There were still they allowed the people to still live amongst them. So it's interesting when you look at these things. And I think all the modern history, to share this point, I think is super fascinating. All that stuff is really cool. But I don't think it has really the final say in really who does the land belong to. Right. That's why all my live streams that I've been doing. And while all this stuff is fascinating, I think it's valuable. People do a great job at it. All the recent history is very important and people have to know it. But the reason why this is a conversation we need to be having is because of the promise made to Abraham and his offspring, right? And so we can't just root it on, the conquering, in my opinion, or who was there first or who was there longer, like you said, but who owns everything, which in my opinion is God. And God, if God gives it to the offspring of Abraham, then that's his prerogative to do. And where I think Islam has a problem is that if they're affirming the Torah and the Injil, then you have to affirm the fact that God told Abraham that this land is going to belong to your seed, your offspring, right? Your physical offspring from your body. So for me, I think, from my perspective, that's a big problem too. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
No, I agree with you. In fact, that is a stance that is very easy for Christians to take because it's cut and dry. It's like God literally said, "Hey, Jews, this is for you. Here you go. This is the promised land. It is my promise to you that you should roll over this." Islam might try, Muslims might try to paint it as, well, it wasn't supposed to be for Isaac's generation, but for Ishmael's generation and that lineage. And we're really that lineage, so therefore we can have it, which is a very bad historical claim, to say the least. But just being as generous with that claim as possible, you're still left with a huge issue. Then it's who was the rightful heir between the two. So you end up with a family dispute.
Yeah.
Which is
but I think, but couldn't you go back and say that, of course, the promised seed is in Isaac, right? And wouldn't the Gospels and the rest of the New Covenant affirm that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then it seems like, you're still in the problem. You're still in the issue, right? You're still stuck. Yeah.
It would be only Islam trying to make it work.
Exactly, for sure.
So, and even if we looked at who was the first nation, they want to try to push that. If we looked at the promise, like you were saying, who had the promise, that's easy. The Jews did. That's cut and dry, simple, according to the Bible and the Torah. Very simple. If we look at who's been there the first, that would be Israel again, because they were there first. So if you want to say, if anyone wants to come on here and say, hey, you got to give it back to the natives, well, then that would be the Jews. They were the natives. The Arabs were the invaders who came in after the fact and conquered. So if you want to say the right of the conqueror, well, we did take it from them, and then we gave it, the Christians took it from the Muslims and then gave it to the Jews because that is what the Bible says. So again, you would have the same issue, the same result. And if you want to say, well, whoever controlled the land the longest, well, the Christians, if we're very generous with our time frame, controlled the land for 515 years. Islam, again, being very generous with Islam, just trying to give them credit as much as possible to make their case. That was 1,090 years. But the Jews were there longer than Islam has even existed. They have controlled that land.
That's good.
That's 1,411 years.
That's
so good. By that, if you try to use that as the criteria, again, you're left with only one option, which Israel needs to exist.
That's good.
So on all four options, as we've discussed, that's the result. I'd love to see if someone had an alternative opinion, so we could actually have a bit of a debate and open discussion. Unfortunately, the 100 people I've invited don't seem to want to join, which is disappointing. So let's see if we can get someone from Twitter on here. Let's share the screen. Here we go. Oop. There we go. Okay, fantastic. I lost it there for a second. So again, I have no clue what is going to be on this. I'll refresh so we get the latest. I do have the stuff I need in the background. So we will be able to invite people up. I'll give them the link. Ask them to come have a nice little conversation with us. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So here we go. So right off the bat, we've got some Arabic writing here. Don't know if they speak English, so we'll go down to our English section here. So let's go ahead. We'll invite this individual here on up. We'll let them know that we're talking about this, and then he could join us. you're more than welcome. Watch the live stream or join. Okay. Make sure I've got that correctly done here. Make sure I got both links on there. There we go. Okay.
You think anybody will pull up?
I don't know. That's just it.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been doing this for probably over a day, just inviting different people.
Yeah.
Definitely anyone that says, don't be silent, don't be silent, speak out. I'm like, okay, come speak. I'm not picky. I'll let you have your conversation. I'll let you make your case, whatever you want,
This comment here with AJ is an interesting comment for me, where it says the church is Israel, not an ethnicity. Now I agree.
Live chat?
It's in a live chat. Yeah, he says the church is Israel, not an ethnicity. And so for sure, and I don't know if you want to put it up, but I'd be interested in engaging with that comment for a little bit, because I think it's important from the Christian believing perspective to kind of
it was AJ
hash this thing out with AJ. Yeah, it says. Yeah.
Oh, with AJ.
It was a 433. Yeah.
I think that was a later one.
Yeah, there's an earlier one that says that the covenants. Yeah, I think that was the earlier one. This comment came in at 433.
433. So that's 436 actually. So that would be
a little bit earlier.
A little bit earlier here. I actually don't think I see it.
You don't see it?
It has been an issue.
Okay.
I have noticed that being an issue lately with YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just read it. It says the church is Israel, not an ethnicity. Now, I agree with that if we can qualify some of our terms, right? When we talk about the ecclesia, the remnant congregation of God, there is not another entity that God goes and makes a covenant with and says, you can be my people if you follow X, Y, Z. So when we talk about the remnant, there was always a remnant in the earth, which came from the body of Abraham, believers and non-believers within there that held to the God of Israel and didn't. And then foreigners joined that people. In the new covenant reality, what we're having is that same cultivated tree that began with Abraham is the remnant, is the ecclesia, are the called out ones of God. And a person can be cut off for this or be grafted into this. And you have that same cultivated tree. So even in the new covenant, God doesn't go and make covenant with nations. God is not giving promises to America or China or places in Europe. He's not going to Afghanistan and establishing covenant with the nation. The same covenant he made with Abraham is what he is building upon in the new covenant reality. And the grafting in isn't just being grafted into Jews, but that tree that had always been there, which was made up of Jews and Gentiles the whole entire time. With the mixed multitude at Mount Sinai, and even much later with Ruth and others joining this cultivated tree that God was pruning and developing and watering and growing. So in the new covenant, when someone comes to Jesus, when they come to Yeshua, they are grafted onto that same cultivated tree, right? So we're talking about the same tree that people are being cut off from or being grafted onto. And even after you've been cut off, the natural branches can be regrafted onto this. What we're talking about is this same cultivated tree. It's not like God abandoned the cultivated tree he was working on with Abraham and now has another tree that he's working on. It's the same tree he's working on while pruning and grafting on branches to that tree. So if a person is going to say the ecclesia, the called out ones of the congregation of God in the New Testament, is the fulfillment of what God brought to Abraham and continues to develop, then I would agree with that, right? But if you're going to say there's another entity, another body of people that God now made a new covenant with in place of the original tree he was working on, I'd have to disagree with that. I'd be willing to discuss that with anybody.
Oh, that sounds good. I would agree that, again, Jesus is very clear when he's saying that they're grafted in. They're being pruned and then grafted in, being opened
100%.
up to the Gentiles to come alongside this promise that was given.
For sure.
So again, I do want to address this, that they point out humans are dying painful deaths out there. Well, yes, they are. Unfortunately, that is a repercussion of war. That's happened throughout human history. Is it tragic? Absolutely. Is it painful? Absolutely. Are the innocent dying with the rest of us? As the movie Patriot said, yeah. but that shouldn't overlook the reasons why and who started it. Because you could say the same reason if we go back to World War II. You could say the same reasons about America joining the war. Well, we have people that are painfully dying in the war that's over there, not even over here. But yet it was still a needed. We still need to step in and stop what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
So they say that we must be their voices. Okay. And support them. Okay. Well, this person right here, come on down and come support them. Just join. And those who are in the live chat, if you come in from Twitter or want to join, the link is pinned in the live chat.
And we wouldn't be a person, and we wouldn't be someone saying that we're rejoicing over the suffering of the innocent, right? I mean, that would be a ridiculous claim to make. Of course not, right? But I think we have to really look at what's happening here is that, these are times of war. And of course, there's casualties in war. And the end goal of all of this should be that every knee bow and every tongue confesses that Jesus is Lord. I mean, that should be the end goal of all of these things. And what's interesting, when we talk about pray for the peace of Jerusalem, we're not praying for just freedom from rockets or freedom from financial burdens or perhaps for an economic increase in the nation. All those are good things, and that shows the blessing of God and over them. But the real peace should be the peace that comes from the Messiah, not based upon circumstance or situation, right? So we can say, yeah, we pray for all the innocent, right? Because the goal is that everyone will bow and every tongue will confess that Yeshua is Lord, that Jesus is Lord. So that should be the focus for us. And I think that is the focus. And we could still say Hamas is wrong. And we could still say that Israel doesn't get everything right. And we could still say that Israel has a chosenness, but is cut off from the tree because of what Romans 9 tells us. And we could say that they can't come to the Father without the Son. And we could still want the nation to do well so that God can bless them without co-signing on everything Israel does. And so I think there can be this healthy balance that holds both things in place. And there could be a desire for Israel to succeed from a believer while still saying that everything Israel does isn't right, while still realizing that God has promises for the natural branches for the sake of Abraham, not because of something that a specific Jew does now in 2023, right? And yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree. Absolutely. You're right there. Our goal as Christians is that everyone comes to know Christ as their Savior, that everyone enters into heaven through the blood of the cross, because there is no other way through it. And anyone's death who is in sin is a tragic thing. No matter who it is, no matter what they've done, it is always a tragic thing. Sometimes that's, unfortunately, the choices they made ended up leading them into this situation, or maybe it is that unfortunately it was the acts of someone else that led them to that unfortunate end. But that's our goal, being on here, engaging with people, talking with people, is that everyone knows and has the opportunity to come to know Christ.
Amen. I agree. I wasn't saying that isn't what your perspective. I was just, for the people who are watching, right, that, even though we're saying this is an evil thing that Hamas is doing, that we reject this thing and it's wicked, and that we are in prayer for the safety of the Israelis, and we want them to be able to wipe out this wickedness of Hamas, doesn't mean that we don't recognize that there are Christians on the other side, that there are innocent on the other side that are suffering. But remember that the catalyst in the recent time that started this was the attack on October 7th. It's not like Israel was sitting around on Simchat Torah, which is the festival celebrating the Torah, and said, you know what, let's go kick Hamas's butt. No, that's not what happened. It was a day of celebration for them, and they were sneak attacked, and these enemies crossed the lines and attacked the people and did one of the most atrocious acts in history. And so it's not like they went over there and just started picking a fight with Gaza. Hamas came in on this day on October 7th, specifically 50 years from the last huge war that happened, the last sneak attack. It is intentional, right? And so they are reacting to save lives. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean everything Israel does is right. That doesn't mean that we don't pray for the innocent that are across the other lines. The point is balance, and that's a big perspective that I want people to have. Recognizing Israel didn't just wake up one day and want to do this. There was a sneak attack that occurred.
Yeah, it's not. This is a reaction. This is a defensive war that they have. They have this terrorist group that's there on their border, and they have allowed to continue to be there. And unfortunately, the choices of those individuals led to this situation. And as far as Israel goes, it needed to do something. Just like on 9/11, there was a big cry from Americans to do something. Do I think that those were the right actions? Now, learning a bit more about Islam, I don't think it was. But it still had to happen. And there's no point in being a Monday morning quarterback about it. So if any of these stick out to you, let me know.
Yeah.
It's basically more of the same thing that I've seen so far every time I've gone on here and looked at it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a misunderstanding. It is people who are trying, and I don't doubt that there are some people that are #FreePalestine who are actively trying to do good, who are looking at this and actively thinking they are doing good. I just don't think it's the right actions. I'm going to invite this person on up if they so desire. But I don't know. What do you think would be the best way? Let me ask you, what would be the best way for Israel to deal with the terrorist element? Putting as most political terms as I can.
Yeah, see, the issue is that I was just watching I don't know if you want to go to the IDF's Instagram, which would be pretty good. They actually issued this thing, I think it was just this morning, the official IDF Instagram. And the gentleman's on there, leader in the military. I'm not sure what his rank is, but he was literally sending a warning to the Gazans to go to the other side of Gaza. I don't remember if it was north or south, where he was telling them to go, but he said, because they're going to attack. And he's telling them, for the sake of your own lives, your time is short. Leave what you are doing, leave your place, and come back after everything has been resolved, and leave the space where you're at now, because what's going to happen is we are going in and we want you to. What nation does this? What nation? And this is embedded within the IDF and Israel's history of sending out pamphlets and warnings that before they go in and attack, they are letting the people know so the innocent can get out, right? And so I think Israel is doing what they can. The problem is, I'm not in the office when the politics are happening and the conversations are happening, right? So I can't say that would have been a better idea. This would have been a better idea. But they are for sure, if you check out their reels, I think it is, they are for sure letting the Gazans know that, hey, this is, we are coming in to do what we have to do. And you're going to have to, the one that has 1 million views, that we are going in and you have to leave where you are at. It's where you go.
Pull it on up here.
Yeah.
Hopefully I shared the audio. Let me know if I didn't here. So we'll go through that in just a second. But just think of that for a second. Thinking, you see, I do history. I'm a big history nut as far as going through the different wars throughout history. Not a thing. There's one other nation that I can think of that did something similar to this. And that was because that nation was scared of how devastating the attack they were going to do was, that they didn't want too many civilians there. They wanted to give them the opportunity to leave, specifically 2 cities. And that is, of course, America in World War II, warning the Japanese, hey, we are going to drop this super new, super big bomb on the city. Get out. But that was the only other time I can think of in history that a place was warned ahead of time and an enemy was told their actions. Say, this is exactly what we are going to do. Get out of there. So we can go ahead and listen in on a little bit of what he says here.
Audio is not coming through.
The audio is not coming through. Forget this thing is very particular on how you share audio. I got the wrong setting. I see. And here we go. Okay. And here we are.
For your immediate safety, we urge all residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City to temporarily relocate south. Let me repeat. We urge all residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City to relocate south immediately. This is a temporary measure. Moving back to northern Gaza will be possible once the intense hostilities end. Hamas puts your life in danger by placing weapons and forces within civilians' area in Gaza, including schools, mosques, and hospitals. The impending IDF operation is set to neutralize these threats of Hamas with precision and intensity. Humanity remains haunted by the massacre unleashed by Hamas on October 7th, a massacre of innocent lives. Israeli men, women, children, and babies were beheaded, executed, raped, and burnt alive. We won't forget that. And the kidnapping of over 200 Israelis, we will not forget. To the residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City, your window to act is closing. Move south. For your own safety, move south. This is not a mere precaution. It is an urgent plea for the safety of the civilians in Gaza.
So just think of that for a second. Again, that just blows my mind because you're giving away your tactical advantage right there. That is a huge advantage. Hamas could take that warning, could get out of there, could move everything. I mean, he's specifically saying, okay, they're here, here, here. These are the locations that they're hiding these stuff at. This is where we're going to be attacking. Get out of that area. Okay? And he's saying it's not going to be a permanent thing. It's going to be a temporary. We're going to come in. We're going to wipe what we need out. And then we're going to be open to having you guys come back in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you think like, put yourself in the scenario that there is someone breaking into your house, attacking you, threatening your family and your loved ones, and that sort of thing. What would your reaction be, right? And so this doesn't make Israel innocent with everything that they do, but just put yourself in that situation that your loved ones, the people you're responsible for, are being attacked, being beheaded, and it's happening. What is your reaction? Let's write down in a piece of paper that all the innocent know. You probably will be enraged and probably lose your mind. And the reason why the Israeli people are so conscious of life is not because all of them are religious or all of them even believe in God. There is this deep culture within the Torah within the law that has this preservation of life and the value of life and man being made in the image of God. That it doesn't require for an Israeli, because they're typically secular, but one of the largest LGTB communities that exists. They are massively high levels of abortion and all these things that are happening. Immensely wicked, right? Things happening in the land. But embedded within their cultural system is this notion from the Torah, from the books that they're learning in their school about life and being made in the image of God, that becomes part of the cultural consciousness, that when the military is going in, they're seeking to preserve life. And as I said, this doesn't make everything Israel does right or every soldier perfect. What I'm saying is that the other nations aren't doing this. Israel's telling them Hamas is sneaking in, right? There's a difference here.
Yeah. So we do have a comment here saying that's not giving away their tactical advantage. It is just a way for them to avoid wrath of the Western nations. Yes and no. In some way, yes. I mean, it will be less, but I have seen no indication that they care much about what the West thinks about their actions. I think they're actually doing this because they do not want to see unneeded deaths. And that's the only thing that makes logical sense in why you would give away. And yes, it is still a tactical advantage. You wouldn't necessarily go and tell the enemy all of your plans. I mean, World War II, we were very clear on not telling the Nazis what we were going to be doing. It is not a thing that you normally do in war. You only sacrifice that if needed. And that is something that they definitely gave up in hopes to save lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, I totally agree with what you're saying, right? But here goes the whole thing, right? This person says, that Israel's trying to avoid. Don't you think Israel already has a black eye from media and what people think? At this point, Does it really matter? What face are they saving? No matter what side Israel comes out on, they're always going to be thought of as occupiers, as evil, as a spawn of Satan, as part of the Illuminati or a Freemason or a New World Order, or the ones who control all the world banks. And all these theories are going to come up no matter what. The Jewish people have always been in the light, getting the wrong side of the stick, always being known as, having horns and being sons of the devil, being serpents. And a lot of it is misunderstanding New Testament and the history. I don't think Israelis care about what the world thinks, right? I really think they're trying to survive. If they had a good reputation that there was to protect, then they could do that. There's no good reputation in the eye of all the billions of Muslims that live around them. So there is no reputation really to protect. They're already getting smeared all over the internet. Everyone thinks that they're utterly wicked. And I'm not talking about the government may be wicked, right? We don't know what happens in the office with Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not there, right? But what I'm saying is the military is still doing things, I think, that it seems like to preserve life as the people are sharing these thoughts and these ideas. They don't need to do that. They could at least go in and do what they have to do. And in many ways, it will be hard to say that it's not justified to save all the lives that they're losing on their side.
Absolutely. I think this here actually, if I share Twitter again, this actually paints the picture you were just putting perfectly. Here we go. About them not needing to worry about it too much, because right now, at least at one point in France, they are still marching. There have been marches all over the world in support of Free Palestine. Everywhere they stormed the Capitol. To my knowledge, no one was arrested, but they stormed the Capitol and for Free Palestine. So these are all people who are supporting what the terrorists had done, or at least the terrorists themselves, because they're the ones who are in control of Gaza. So again, they painted Israel as the baby killers, as the ones who went through and slaughtered the innocent, which again, by what we just listened to, isn't the case. There's no reason why they would go out and say, hey, we're going to attack here, follow in and do the attack, but warn the people so they can get out. If anything, if they were actually trying to attack and kill as many civilians as possible, they would do the opposite. They'd say that they're going to attack the south and everyone needs to move north, and then they would attack the north. That's where, at least if that's what they wanted, that's what I would expect, but we do not see that there. So again, most of these people, I think some of them actually do want to have peace, but if you have a people group who have raised their kids, teaching them that you are the worst creature, you're worst of all creatures, you are absolutely horrible, dehumanize you, remove your humanity, and then say that, our end won't come, the end of the world and our final victory won't come until we kill every single one of these Jews.
Yeah.
You have an issue. And that is not something that you can come to peace about until those are addressed in such an effective way. I guess the question would only be, what would be the effective way there?
And there's reports coming in from Hamas literally playing ball with dead babies' bodies, right?
Yep.
Playing kickball, passing them around. We are talking, and we're not just talking about. So let's say Hamas got together and felt that the land was there, so they want to engage in Israel with war. These are what nations do. Nations go to war, right? I expect nations to go to war for land, territory, resources, whatever it is, right? And I expect that to happen. But there are legislations and rules for how you engage with war, right? There is the could even be said the humane side of war, right? We're talking about kidnapping, raping, pillaging, elderly, minors, other women, decapitating babies, right? Playing with babies' bodies parts, passing them around. We are talking about some of the most grotesque sins that a human being can commit, that it's hard to even say that they're human. We know they're human, but it's hard to even say they're human. So we're seeing some of the most grotesque things occurring that are characteristic of Hamas. Do we have soldiers that have been on the right side of the war in history who have done unspeakable things, abominable things? 100%. This has happened. But this should not have been characteristic of the military. What we're seeing and what Hamas is doing, these atrocities, is the character of Hamas, and I believe stemmed completely out of Islam and the Hadith and the Son of the Prophet, the traditions of the Prophet, what he believed that came out of the perversions of his own mind, is what is giving these men today the right, the pass to act out on the most darkest segments of the human desire, right? The most darkest, most demonic, most evil desires of the human condition is now given a seal of approval by this madman who desired such things for himself and for his students, and he wanted to pass forward. So he created this religious system to act out all types of perverse things, and that's where we have this Hamas and others and ISIS and others who are engaging in such things because all they are doing is working out the darkest imaginings of a human heart and a human condition. And they've been given the seal of approval by their prophet in their religious system. Not only do I get to be as wicked as I possibly want to be, but I also have the seal of, quote, God, of Allah in my actions. This is the dangerous and grotesque thing. If we see someone who claims to be a Christian doing things that are contrary to the New Testament, would say you are not a Christian. If we saw a Jew doing things that contradict the Torah, then you are not a Jew who is in right standing with the God of Israel. You are a broken covenant and you will be cut off, right? But when you see a Muslim doing these things that Hamas is doing, you would say you are doing what your prophet has done, has said to do, and the natural outcome of working out the Hadith and what the Quran says of how to treat Jews and believers and others. So that's the big difference.
Yeah, that they have, and that's where it all comes back to. And unfortunately, that's where you've got to deal with that in order to have any sort of actual peace. In order to have any sort of true solution, you have to deal with the root of the cause. And you've nailed right in the head. The root is Islam itself. And until you deal with that, this is going to happen again. And it would be incredibly different if Hamas came in and it was a surgical strike. They definitely could have done it because this was definitely a surgical strike. This was well planned out. This was someone put some serious time into this, some serious effort into planning this event itself, this attack itself. If they would have done that and it would have been a surgical strike where they hit military targets, where they hit, governmental leadership only, okay, I could have a bit more respect for that sort of attack than specifically targeting non-combatants.
Mm-hmm. You want to see the caliber of the honor and integrity of a nation, and I forget where this quote comes from, but I'll paraphrase it. See how they treat the most innocent, right? The most defenseless. And then you'll learn about the caliber of the nation, right? So Hamas, as an entity, this doesn't speak about all Palestinians, but you can see that they are absolutely demonic, wicked, vile people, right? With this attack, and there's no integrity or honor in the system. And like you're saying, brother, one thing is, if we're talking about people who are going rogue from the religious system they claim to represent, the danger here that we are dealing with is that this is Islam, okay? This is not someone's radical interpretation of something that Muhammad might have said. This is Islam worked out to its fullest extent to establish, to take back land, establish Sharia law, and to subjugate those that would not take their Shahada and embrace Muhammad as the prophet and embrace Allah. So this is Islam. This is the danger of it, right? And this is the difference between if a Christian goes off the road and does something that's wrong or sinful, we say, hey, you're not in line with the Bible. A Jew, you're not in line with the Bible, right? But the Muslim, what do you tell him? He'll say, I'm only doing what Allah has decreed through the prophet, right? This is my religious, this is what I believe to be true. And this is the danger about it.
Exactly. Following Quran 9:29, Quran 9 98:6, as well as Quran 9:30. Following all of those in line, yeah, it's cut and dry. There's no way of really arguing against it. I have the picture up here, remaining up here, just to point out this is kind of backwards. It's because of the actions of the terrorists that they've groomed their children into thinking this way that has led to this issue.
Yeah.
Because
I
again,
heard someone say, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, it's interesting that, I was hearing a lot of commentators speak and people from the land and Jewish people, and it says they say, I forget who said this exactly, but it's interesting that it's not in Hamas's best interest to really build up their quote nation, right? Their people.
No.
Because if you build up their people, then they'll have jobs and they'll have school. I think it was probably David Wood talking about this, right? And others, I think AP was talking about this also, that if they have schools and they have something that's meaningful to them, then now they have something to live for. But if you don't give them the aid that's coming in, if you don't give them an education, school, family, something that's valuable, which would be a normal life, right? If you don't give them that, then they're always going to feel like they're being shorthanded, that they're the underdogs, that something's taken from them, so they have something to die for. But if you gave them schooling, education, hospitals, healthcare, if you gave them like parks to play in, and they were able to have families and flourish, now they have something to live for. So they're not going to want to die, right? They're not going to want to die and go to war and start to fight with Israel that they're really not going to be able to win, right? And so it highlights the wickedness of Hamas. And remember, recognizing there's wickedness in Hamas doesn't mean that there can't be wickedness in the parliament or in the government of the modern state of Israel, right? So I think we have to have balance in these things. And we can say Israel might have a wicked government. Just, we could put it out there. Israel's government could theoretically still be wicked, and God can still have a promise for the natural branches who are in the land. And this is what Romans 9 says, right? Paul desired to be cut off for the sake of his brothers because they rejected Messiah. He was willing and prayerful and in grief that he could not be cut off from the Messiah for his brothers. He desired that. And then he goes on to say in Romans 9, because to them, in their state of unbelief, belong the covenant, the promises, the adoption as sons, the temple. All these things still belong to them. Now, this does not mean they get to the Father without the Son. We are in a transitionary period. Until they breathe their last, or until the return of the Messiah, they can be grafted back on. Okay. So we are in that transitionary period. You can have balance in these things as people are hearing this. I hope they're getting that, right? Not trusting in government, but trusting in the Lord primarily.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to do. We need to have our hopes in Christ, in the future, in that promise. And fortunately, it's war. And like you said before, that's kind of what nations do. Nations have done this throughout history. The only thing that's unprecedented about this is the fact that it's targeted, that it is religiously driven, that is the goal behind that, is the absolute eradication of Israel based upon what they believe. And that goes back to the whole chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, that means mass genocide. That means follow the conclusion. What happens to Israel in that case if you succeed in that? And it's not pretty. It's a lot more deaths.
The famous words of Golda Meir that has been said by others, right? If Israel lays down their weapons, there'll be peace. If Israel lays down the weapons, there'll be no peace. There'll be no Israel. But if Hamas does, there'll be peace, right? The inversion of it. Essentially stating that, hey, if Israel, that Israel's willing to live in peace, right? And anyone can see this, right? If Israel had no weapons, they would cease to exist as a nation. And this is the necessity of the existence of a Jewish state. AJ says he doesn't want it to be, he wants to be a democracy that's not ethnocentric. Brother, do you know what the size of the land of Israel actually is? Like New Jersey. It's a drop in the bucket compared to all the places that belong to the Arab people. And if the Holocaust, the Shoah, and all the other atrocities, the pogroms, inquisitions, do not beg for the necessity of a Jewish nation for their own safety. If you can't see that, then I'm not sure you can see anything or draw any logical conclusions from anything, right? That there needs to be a space and a place that the Jewish people can go to, and the rest of the world. If you would even to take through the percentages of what the size of Israel is in comparison to the rest of the world, it is a speck on a humongous world that everyone else can go to. And so the question is, when the wars were happening earlier on, 6-Day War, other wars, and these displaced people were there, why didn't the other Arab nations take them in, right? There's a lot going on in history that when we look at, necessitates the need for a Jewish nation to exist. And mind you, they didn't cut everybody off from it. They let people in. People are able to visit and travel and go to places and see the sites. What's causing this issue? Why do walls exist? Why does the earlier generation of those that were born in the land not remember when there was no wall there separating these major places? Why was the wall necessary? Because people were coming in and doing terroristic attacks, seeking to attack the people. It's insane. Right. So he says we need to strive for unity. Yeah. Strive for the unity that's found in the Messiah. Right. Because those that are not finding unity in Christ are going to find themselves outside of Christ, outside of the Messiah, and they're going to be at odds with the God of Israel. And that's what we're seeing here now. Right. And the Jewish people, I'll say it again, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. They need Jesus. Without Jesus, they cannot come to the Father, period, point blank. There's no compromising on that. I've been clear about this. I don't believe in a bilateral ecclesiology. I don't believe in dual covenant theology. I don't believe the Jews can approach God through what Moses gave them. They must go through the new and better covenant that we're in. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't still have promises for them now while they're in disbelief, like Romans 9. So the unity we're striving for is the unity to see everybody come to Messiah, but we can still call wicked, wicked, and evil, evil, without having to elevate a people or a nation above another while just having clear eyes to see what the Bible teaches.
Absolutely. As long as Islam is their doctrine and their belief, we will not have peace. There is no peace in Islam. There's only slight pauses between massive wars, according to Muhammad. And you can see that in the acts of the caliphs and the companions of Muhammad himself. And I've done brief histories on all of them. And again, we see nothing but bloodshed once they get full control over everything.
Just which with AJ, instead of typing all those letters, we'll press the button and pull up.
Yep.
Be a lot less effort for you.
You can come up, join. It's a nice, easy conversation. You can see we haven't been hostile. We're not at each other's throats. We just want to have a nice conversation.
Radar's passive, man.
Radar is probably a lot more passive than I am. Let's be honest. If you've watched my videos recently.
They've been good.
So again, I think that we need to deal with the root of the issue, but at the same time, we can't let evil exist. We have got to make a stand. So
sure.
All you need is a mic. You don't even need your camera. I won't even require a camera. Just have a mic, have a phone. You're good to go.
Yeah,
good to go. Sure. Set up. Yep. Go on up. Come on up. See, I've had conversations on here quite a bit. On them, the Trinitarian Muslim, on him. Yeah, we have good conversations with him. It's a fun one to have conversation with.
That dude, yeah, he's crazy. He's a good guy, though. I don't think he's a bad dude.
No, I love talking to him. I'd say he's my favorite Muslim ever.
Yeah.
That's saying a lot.
I've been noticing a lot of Muslims trying to use rabbinic literature to back up their interpretations of Muhammad being a prophet in the Quran. It's been insane, man. Insane.
I think that they've got to turn to that. And I think one of their major keystones is that Muhammad is in the Bible. And they bend over backwards trying to find that. Mm-hmm. And I think that is probably going to be one of the next things that falls, because they're going to have to come to the realization that he's not there. But that's a huge issue, because the Quran says he is. Specifically says, hey, go look, he's there. And he's not. Mm-hmm. So that will be the next one that we hear something along the lines of this.
Repeat it again, very carefully. the scientific miracles argument in the Quran got debunked. It's all gone in the bin, not even the recycle bin. You can't even recycle it. It's gone to the waste, like poo. It's gone.
And we're proud of that, yeah?
So,
have you seen
with,
have you seen
Go ahead.
CP's video that he put up, that he reposted, about the I think it was the Jordanian talking about, Saudi Arabians is talking about how the Palestinians aren't even Arabs, but there's some other type of people. It was a video that he put up, a short he put up, and it was in the Arab. Have you seen that?
No, I've not seen that.
It was really fascinating. He was calling for Israel to stop stressing everybody out and just wipe Hamas out, right? Because they're even a thorn in the side of the Arab nation. It was really interesting. I'll see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, but think of that for a second. Think of any other nation throughout history. If you know, Mexico would have been doing the things that Hamas is doing, we would have another state. It wouldn't even cross our minds. It would have already have happened.
I'm gonna drop it in the private chat.
Sure. Yeah, we'll pull it on
YouTube
up.
video. There you go. It was just interesting. Like, I don't know how much this guy, but he's actually a Muslim. He's from Saudi Arabia, and it's just interesting. I think he shows a bit about it. See if I can find it. That's a little bit of a longer one. It's an 8-minute one. Let me see if I can find it if it's a short, because he had it as a short. Oh, it's not here. But you can begin to see what he starts to say. He shows the video.
Pull that on up in just a second. So put this on. If you guys want to go watch it separately or afterwards, we'll put the link in the chat in just a second. So,
And the guy's not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu either, this Muslim. So he I think he's saying it as it is, right? As he sees it, at least. So I don't think he's trying to, pander to anybody.
so pull that on up here. Here we go.
You're gonna have, it's in Arabic, so you're gonna have to read it, guys.
Well, then the audio doesn't much matter now, does it?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, we can kind of just let people read it. He says, there's nothing Saudi Arabia did for you. It even established a state for you. And he goes on to say, King Fahad, when President Reagan asked him to finance the Contras rebel groups, he said, one good turn deserves another. Give me a Palestinian state. Reagan said, okay. They agreed upon a Palestinian state. King Fahad informed Araf that they've gotten a Palestinian state. Araf ran away and agreed to meet King Fahad. He's giving the background. Only 10 years after all of this, Arafat wasn't interested in Palestine. None of you wanted a Palestinian state. Since you have no case, no country, and no land, this land belongs to Israel, according to the Quran, and you are displaced people. He says, scatter from all over, Mongols, Turkmens, Syrians, Armenians, you're gypsies. You have nothing in Palestine. Palestine is the state of Israel for the people of Israel. He says, and the people of Israel, just so you'll know, the people of Israel are the sons of Isaac, and we are Arabs, are the sons of Ishmael. Isaac and Ishmael were brothers, and their father was Abraham. He says, that makes them our cousins. But where did you come from? How were you a part of all of this? You were scattered originally, gypsies, Mongols, Turkmens, Sassanians, whatever, Romans, leftovers of other peoples. How are you a part of all of this? How are you a part of us? The people of Israel live in their land, but you have no land and have no case. Don't try to fool us. And about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, just so you know, there's no such thing as Al-Aqsa. There's only Al-Quds, Jerusalem. The Al-Aqsa Mosque mentioned in the Quran is located in Jorana, 29 kilometers from the city of Taif. There were two mosques after the Al-Aqsa, the further and the Al-Adna, the closer. Your Al-Aqsa Mosque was built by Hisham in the year 682. So he's going in, right? He's really ripping apart their argumentation. And he's going to go on to, and so please do watch this. But he goes in and he really says that they really have no place in the land, and that you don't look like us. You're not part of our people, right? You're not part of the Arab nation. Look, I would disagree with some of the Ishmael claims and those things. But his whole thing is, where did you all come from? Where did you Palestinians come from? You're not Arab people. You're a mix of all other people that are in that territory. And Israel has a right to the land. And this is a Muslim saying it, even according to the Quran, that it belongs to Bnei Israel, the children of Israel.
Absolutely.
Interesting video, right? Interesting, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting, hearing from a Muslim perspective. They can't be like, see, he's really a Jew. Well, they might try that. But they shouldn't.
Yeah. But I thought that was a fascinating video, so if people could check that out.
Absolutely. And I'm putting it in the chat right now. Here we go. So that if you guys want to go check that out, it's in the live chat. You can click on that and check on that video there. So I'm a little disappointed. I sent out a lot of invites and
Nobody.
no one showed up. And I just offered for them to give their case, not saying they had to say anything or any sort of restrictions. No, just give your view. Tell us what you think. But nothing, huh?
Yep, seems bad.
I don't know, guys. You got any other thoughts on this? We've went through the brief history, pulled that out.
Mm-hmm.
We went through different options that you could, different stances you could take. All of them that I can think of, and the one Radar suggested, all come back to the Jews having the land. So unless they give us some other point of view, I can't see there being any sort of logical option. So we do have a guest here. Welcome. You've been
Hello.
on the stream before. You're more than welcome to join. What is your opinion on the whole situation?
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear
Yes,
you.
we can.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm as usual. I come on these streams and take things off in attendance. So, because my focus has been on mass media, so specifically Hollywood. I've started a doctoral research, quantitative doctoral research on how Hollywood has portrayed Christian symbols and terms for this past half century, and that's been a huge awakening for me. I mean, I had some preconceptions before I began it, but those were all blown up. So as far as what's going on and with Israel, it's beyond words. All of us have been bombarded with these images that we're not really used to seeing. I mean, yeah, outside of Hollywood movies, but we tend to know those are for the most part fiction, so we can cope with that. But to see, the more popular one, the woman being just completely mangled, made nude, and humiliated publicly. I mean, that's just, and I don't know how many of you may have caught the video with the family. It was like two elderly parents and two young kids, a boy and a girl, that were being held hostage. They were sitting on the ground, and their sister was somewhere in the background, and these terrorists were completely like mocking the little kids, and they were asking about their little sister, and they're like, one of them goes, "Your sister no more, your sister no more," and you hear a pow, and he's going on, "Your sister no more," just laughing while the kids are crying. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's scarring. I can't even imagine. I can't even seeing those videos. I can't even imagine what's going on. And of course, in Palestine right now, but Israel, so it's hard to say anything negative about either group with that in mind. But the thing is that, we all knew that this was coming, right? I mean, for decades, we knew, everyone has been prepped for World War III, for this attack on Israel. I mean, all this stuff is biblical. All of us have some kind of general agreement on the interpretations of these kinds of prophecies. And it seems like most of us agree that these things that are going on right now are prophecies being fulfilled. So, I mean, yeah. Just, it's hard to keep a Christian spirit, a Christian heart, one that's just loving, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and all that, all those kinds of things, when we've been subjugated to this kind of imagery and this kind of behavior, and then watch our fellow citizens, our neighbors, or what it is. Of course, the Muslims, no doubt all these organized pro-Islam protests are mostly Muslim, but yeah, reportedly it's more than just Muslims. And to watch, and I'm sure all of us know at least one person that is also pro-Palestine, free Palestine, and all that. So, and that's been conditioned. I mean, this has been conditioned again through media for the 21st century. It's become vastly pro-Islam. So, anyways, my point is that it's hard to say, you know what, I want this to end. Hamas, Muslims, terrorists must be stopped at any cost. But the reality is, for this to end, that's what has to happen. I mean, you guys more than anyone else have experienced how some people are just beyond reproach, and that's why Jesus gives us that limit. It says, at some point you got to dust your feet. At some point it's good to cut off and pluck out, lest the whole body perish. This is why. I mean, some people are just beyond repair, and at that point you just have to do what you have to do, unfortunately.
I would caution against that conclusion being reached quickly. Do remember that we don't necessarily know what the Lord is doing in each person's life. I mean, look at Paul.
Yeah.
The whole thing with Paul, he would have definitely, up until his complete conversion, a lot of Christians would have said, oh, he's, at least standard Christians nowadays would say, oh, just dust off your feet and walk away. Granted, that was an act of God, so that's a bit of an outlier. That's just an example that we need to pray from. Yes, it's very easy to get disheartened. It's very easy to be
bitter, hard-hearted.
Yeah, hard-hearted about it. Don't let this harden your heart. People, humanity is a fallen race. We are inherently corrupt. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, there go most of us, actually.
Well, as far as the Paul example, it's pretty neat that you brought that up. That's one I kind of, when I start feeling like this about whatever issue is going on, it's that example that kind of snaps it back into that Christian mindset, brings it back to reality, grounds me. And, in Orthodox circles, there's a more modern person, a monastic from Mount Athos, who was made a saint. And in one of his writings, he wrote this like prophecy, they're calling it, where Russia will save Greece during this end times kind of war. To me, that's absurd, especially if you look at Putin and who he is, and those who have Russian friends and who are from Russia know that Putin has been, he's been in power for 3 decades. I mean, that should speak for itself. So, I mean, if you know what I mean, like there's a usual label with that kind of person. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, there's always that Paul. I mean, even someone like Putin can potentially come and save Christendom, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm more the person where I gotta put my finger in the wound. I gotta see to believe.
I can understand that. And again, it's hard when we're seeing these images when that's everywhere around us, always being bludgeoned with it. But like in the video where I shot the Quran, I was very clear on why I did it, what the purpose is of it, and I prayed for the terrorists. I reminded everyone that they are just as lost and need salvation just as much as anyone else. So does that mean that in the moment, if I'm given the opportunity to defend an innocent life, will I take it? Yes, I will. There's no question in my mind about that. But it doesn't mean I won't stop praying for them. So.
Yeah, and so to play the antagonist, maybe to spice things up, but also to discuss something that people are reluctant to. I seem to be a willing participant to do that often. But on the flip side of this is Israel, Hebrews, whatever label you want to use, and how that's kind of stirred the bee's nest, the whole establishment of Israel, half a century ago. Now, yeah, I've got mixed feelings about this. I understand that is the land they were promised, but they did lose it. And isn't that prophecy that they would lose their inheritance?
What?
Well,
Say that again. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead, bro. You do your thing. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was about ready to just say about I know you need to duck out in a second here, and I was just about ready to.
I just want to deal with that. So back in Romans 9, like I've shared earlier, which I think is really important. I appreciate the spirit which you're saying this, Serpico, because I don't think you're trying to be like, malicious or any of that stuff. I think you're honestly, posing your thoughts and ideas. Paul in Romans 9 says that he wishes he can be cut off from Messiah, that he has unceasing, non-stopping grief and anguish in his heart for his brothers who are not believing in Messiah. And to them, look at what he presently says, right? If we go to Romans 9:3, I wish I could be accursed, separated from Messiah for the sake of my brothers, my kinsmen according to the flesh, non-believing natural branches who are disconnected from tree. He wishes he can be cut off from Messiah for them. And he not Romans 9:4 is vital. Every believer, every Christian everywhere should know this passage really well because it's important. It's a lens by which we need to look at the Jewish people who don't believe. Part of it anyway. He says, to them, these non-believing Jews, they're Israelites, and to them belong the adoption as sons, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, and the temple service, and the promises. So to them, in an unbelieving state, still belongs the promises and the calling and the chosenness that God has for them. With that being said, the day will come, either they breathe their last or Messiah returns, where if they have not trusted in him, they will be eternally cut off. And every person, whether you're a Jew or Gentile, are leveled at the foot of the cross. The only way you get to the Father and receive eternal life is through the free gift of the Messiah who gave himself, was in the grave for 3 days and rose again, is now at the right hand of the Father. So this is the fact of all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand it. It's, I'm not as well versed as I should be. I go more on memory of scripture than recent studies, to be honest. But I mean, I do remember reading previously that as far as the Jews go, whatever it may be, God's going to handle the Jews. So there shouldn't be any kind of spirit of retaliation or anger or whatever it might be.
But there shouldn't be boasting against the natural branches, right?
Yeah, honestly, I can't remember. I just remember that notion.
Yeah, Romans 11 says that we shouldn't boast against the natural branches because in the same way that they were cut off, you too can be cut off if you engage with disbelief, if you have disbelief. And the same way that they can be regrafted on, right? Because it's their tree. It's the cultivated tree. And God, and I can't help but stress again that God is not concerned about magic genetics, okay? God is concerned about covenant and promise to his seed. The reason why you get to the end of Leviticus, the children of Israel can go back to the land when there's no temple is because of the covenant he made with Abraham. And what's the covenant he made with Abraham? That he would give him a seed and the land. Are we just talking about Isaac? No, we're talking about the ultimate seed that's going to come from Genesis 3:15 that's going to destroy the work of the serpent. And this is the Messiah. This is why the covenant of the new covenant is made with the house of Israel and the house of Jacob, right? Meaning that the covenant is made with that cultivated tree, and everybody who joins themselves to be in the new covenant have to be a part of that tree. Not that Gentiles become Jews or Jews become Gentiles, but the only way to be in the new covenant is to be part of that cultivated tree. There is no other tree that God is making promises or pruning or growing or cultivating. He's taking branches from all these other wild trees and putting them onto the cultivated tree. So the natural branches who are cut off, if they repent, they can be grafted on, and it's very natural for them to be regrafted on. And Paul goes on to draw the illusion of how easy it would be to regraft the natural branches on, because those from the nations are wild branches that get grafted on. If God could do the impossible and put a wild olive shoot on a cultivated tree, then how much more so can he put the natural branches back on? So this is the balance and perspective that we have to have.
So hence the Messianic Jews and that kind of thing, right?
Well, I think what we're talking about is Messianic Jews are the Jews that have been regrafted onto that cultivated tree. But remember, the non-believing Jews at this point, currently still to them belongs the promises, the temple system, the law, the covenant, the adoption as sons, but they're disconnected from the tree. And the big question is, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but the big question is, what is the root of that cultivated tree? the root of the cultivated tree has to be the Abrahamic covenant. And the nourishment from that root is the new covenant that we operate in that feeds us by the Holy Spirit, allowing us to be reconciled to God. And this is why people who say the Jews in the land don't have a right to the land, or Christians who say the Jews in the land don't have a right to the land, in a sense, are picking apart the very foundation for the new covenant that we operate in today. And if you start slicing and dicing the covenant that Abraham made, that God made to Abraham, then you run the risk of heavily, immensely misunderstanding the new covenant reality we have. Because how is it that God is allowed to bring those from the nations onto the cultivated tree? It's because God already promised Abraham that he will be the father of many nations. So, just want to share that.
Appreciate it. Before you take off, Radar, if I may, bro, I just, on a personal note, I was a follower of Radar's not too long ago. I had a misunderstanding with one of the mods. Really, I was just me typing a comment, and then
just send me an email, brother. I don't think we should talk about that right now. Send me an email. info@radarapologetics.
I just wanted to apologize for my behavior that day. That's all.
I appreciate that. Send me an email, brother. We can talk about it offline. Not an issue.
10-4.
So go check out Radar Apologetics, the fantastic work he is doing there, the deep Bible study dives
Appreciate you, brother.
he has got there. They are gold, pure
Appreciate that, brother.
life-giving.
Yeah. And I shared this stream. So, anybody from the Radar family who's in here, please do subscribe to your brother Christ and go subscribe to his wife, also El in Search of Elohim. Our channel's dope too, and they're doing great stuff combating the lies of Islam. So, brother, I appreciate you. God bless you. Serpico, God bless you. I look forward to that email from you, all right?
Yeah, keep on keeping on.
Blessings. Peace, brother.
Okay, is there any other questions you had upon that, or any other points of view that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably things that I really wanted to talk to with Radar, because naturally is I would imagine much more grounded in the Old Testament stuff and all that. But I imagine that you could probably tackle it too. Just going back to what he was saying, and he put it in a really good light as far as the Hebrews and their inheritance and their standing with God, and their claim to the land, Israel. But like I was saying earlier, I've had a rude awakening recently. I was definitely pro a holy land, and that belongs to the Jews, and all those kinds of things up until recently. And when I was doing my research, it became difficult or impossible, really, for me to no longer acknowledge the massive influence that Hebrews had. And I'm using that word intentionally, Hebrews instead of Jews, because I always forget his name. The Jewish lawyer he's the conservative who does all the streams.
Ben Shapiro?
Yeah, thank you, Ben Shapiro.
Whose wife is, by the way, she's a doctor, if you didn't know.
No.
Just got to be clear about that point.
Okay. Yeah, no. He recently made a point in one of his streams. He made it like a differentiation between Jews and Hebrews. He's like, the Hebrews are more the common ethnic Jews, so to speak, the ones that are not really practicing the religion. And the Jews are the more pious ones. So I'm referring to these ethnic Jews, these Hebrews that, kind of deviated not only from Christ, but from their own Old Testament practice and beliefs, and therefore their own ethics. So, and that's what, Hollywood was literally founded by Jews. It was bought, purchased, sold, built up by Jews. All these big production companies managed for decades by Hebrews, forgive me. So, and all that is new information to me. But to see just how much negative influence their products, their productions have had on society, not just in America, but worldwide, was just a shock. And just to see how much they've pushed things like abortion, suicide, murder, that's no small thing. And so I don't know. I think that just kind of brings us to where we're at right now as a society. I mean, I think the greatest killer in the 20th century was cancer, still unaddressed. But I think the greatest killer of or butcher of spirit, of soul, has been mass media, 20th and 21st century. And look at what we're doing now to each other because of it. And even with what we're just talking about in the context of this conversation, of how, it's hard to not be bitter and hateful toward someone when you're constantly being bombarded with these images that bring the worst out of you. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I have mixed feelings about what's going on right now between Israel and Islam. I just feel like, to me, it's kind of like the Bloods versus the Crips. Like, I don't have no skin in this fight. Like, let it be what it's be. But that's kind of an ugly attitude. It's kind of that lack of love, kind of indifferent kind of attitude, which is the opposite of love.
Well, there is a distinct difference, I would definitely say, between even the Jews that would be against Christianity adamantly. They don't have in their scripture where it says that they need to go kill us or enslave us. I'd say that's a big difference between the two.
Yeah. Or she was 9 years old, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So I would say that would be a huge difference between the two. I think that the Jews do deserve the land, depending on how you look at it. I guess if you're going to say, just hypothetically, by your stance, what would you say is the reason why you would say no?
No to
the Jews holding the land.
Oh, I don't know if I would say no. To be honest with you, like I said, I've got mixed feelings. I really don't know how to feel about that. Like, before I was definitely pro their having the land, but then after learning about the history, the implications, the backlash from Islam, which is kind of, now that I'm, and in lieu of these recent events, it's kind of ridiculous to say the backlash from Islam when really they're the aggressors. Now that I know the history. I mean, again, I was raised in the States. We're not taught about the reality of Islam. So I had no idea. I was completely ignorant about the facts until recently, until I started following these streams. So with all that in mind, I mean, yeah, and I've got to say, even in a small conversation with Radar, like, he makes a very good point. The whole, I mean, they are the tree. So you got to say they have, between the two, they have the rightful claim to the land. Outside of that, of course, we all know it's Greek. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So the question is, if you want to go from the biblical stance, of course, they do have the right to the land. It's very clear in the Bible that they would have that land is set aside for them. If you're looking at the different aspects, though, from a secular standpoint, you say, okay, well, I'm not going to do the whole Bible thing. I'm only talking. And there's a conversation many of you guys might be having with people saying outside. We went through the history of that regent on up from, was it 1200 BC to today. And we took a look at, if they claim, well, it's got to go to the natives, we got to turn the land back over to the natives before we invaded. It's like, no, we did that. That was the decolonization, was us giving it to the Jews. Before that, the conquerors, the colonizers, were the Muslims who were squatting on the land.
Right.
So that's not an argument that really holds much water if you know the history around it. You got the right of the conqueror, which of course would be us in that case. And in that case, I'd say the Christians did the right decision by giving it over to the Jews. Undoubtedly. And then you've got the final one, which would be, okay, well, who controlled the land the longest? If you want to try to use that metric, again, I think that's a very weak stance. I think the natives stance, turning over to native stance, is a weak stance. And I think that whoever controlled the land the longest is also another weak stance. But even if we want to go down that route, we still see that the Jews had it for over 1,400 years. It was under Jewish control from the time that Israel was originally founded to today. And that really outpaces Islam's control over it. So, yeah, it'd still go to the Jews. no matter how you look at it.
Hmm.
And I think the attitude, for the very fact of the attitudes that are given from the surrounding areas, I think it's very obvious which way it should be. So that Israel has done its counterattack, made its move, right? Or at least a warning that's going to be making its move into Gaza. And they could have been doing that the entire time. They are not the aggressors. The ones that are the aggressors are the Muslims. And that has been shown throughout their history that it is always a consistent aggression. There's never a time. I mean, you do have times of peace, but according to Islam, that's just the break between the wars so you can prep for more war. There's never a time of, okay, let's have a lasting peace. We're no longer going to be seeking to conquer the world. And I think they have done, over the last 30, 40 years, I think they've done a bit of infiltration into our culture. I mean, you can see that by just the pure number of people who are running and who are marching and protesting across the United States, across the world itself. I think they've done quite a bit of infiltration, and I think that's going to be an issue that will bite us in the butt if we don't address it.
Yeah, that's one thing that really bugs me. Like, I understand they're under scrutiny somehow. I understand they're trying to do their best to do things in a diplomatic way. But in lieu of everything, when you're allowing your enemy to not only escape targets, but to even set things up where they're using human shields for their media moments of media propaganda. Why? I mean, what's the point? Why are you even doing that? Like, it's not only bad idea, it's counterproductive. It's empowering your enemy. So why are they doing that?
You talked about where they're publicly saying, hey, we are going to attack this position here.
Right.
Guys, get out of the way. Civilians move. We don't want to hurt you guys. Yes, I agree with you. That doesn't make any sense if they are trying to wage a war like they are painting the Jews of raging, where it's, hey, we're targeting civilians. No, that you wouldn't do that. In fact, in normal war standards, you wouldn't do that act. That just makes no logical sense as far as a strategic position.
And what I don't think that media is talking about is how Hamas leadership did not allow citizens to flee when they had the opportunity. They had days to leave, but leadership automatically said, no, you're not going to leave. We'll not allow them to leave. So, I mean, who's really targeting civilians, and why isn't media complaining about that relentlessly, or any of its other stuff? I mean, why is it so backwards?
I guess that goes back to, if the Jewish state, being Israel, controlled all social media and controlled all media, then we would be seeing a very worldwide pro-Israel message being sent out. And we're not seeing that. In fact, we're seeing the extreme opposite. We're seeing massive condemnations. We're seeing massive support for the terrorist attack that occurred and the blood that was shed. So I think that is truly telling on itself of who the aggressors are in this situation. And to tell you truthfully, who I rather deal with. Because I'd rather deal with the Jews being in control of Israel than the Muslims being in control of Israel. Because as soon as they get control of the area, they're going to be looking for the next guy to go poke.
Yeah. Personally, I would say that, to me, it's like you're choosing a lesser evil there. I mean, either you're going to choose to be a kafir, or you're going to choose to be goy. Either way, you're going to be a second-class citizen. But as far as the media control thing goes, I can't remember again. My brain's just not working these days. But there's an undercover report or undercover investigation by a more popular YouTuber or whatever, where he did an investigation on NPR, and he went there as a Muslim Brotherhood fundraiser, and he wanted to do a program in NPR, and actually have this in the intro of one of my videos on my own channel. Why does Hollywood support Islam? I think the video is called. But basically, he went in there and he was saying, you know what, basically showing that he was funded by terrorists without saying it. And he was asking NPR how much control he would have over their content with certain donations. And they were admitting that, one, yeah, the Jews give a lot of money and they're not, you know, NPR is kind of tired of the Jews. And two, that if they in fact gave a certain amount of money, they would have influence over the content that NPR would put out. So I think there's been a change in regard. You know, I think the Hebrew presence in media is still there, but it's not as big a factor. Like, for instance, Japan, you know, the whole manga, anime fascination, the Marvel and DC shooting themselves in the foot with all this woke stuff, you know. And, you know, just like I got lots of examples for how Islam is being portrayed, even early on. Actually, it's quite, even, you know, speaking of Marvel, even Marvel has portrayed Islam in a positive light. So there's like as Muslim heroes and so on as early as the mid 20th century. Again, this is to my surprise. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, but as far as Hebrew influence in media in the 21st century, it's not as prominent as it used to be because other groups are now dominating, including even Bollywood is getting their foothold in there. But it's still there. And that's why I always bring up this point of they're creating a golem. For the longest time, this media has really pushed these kinds of anti-Christian ethics or even Jewish ethics. I mean, don't kill, don't covet. You know, even, you know, I mentioned that Islam is more, you know, she was 9 years old kind of thing. But if you think about it, and you look at media, it really pushed this, how can I put it, this enamorment with young girls, for example. Like one of the famous singers recently, the second Madonna, I forgot her name, the Mickey Mouse Club girl, the blonde one. Do it to me one more time. No? All right. Anyway. I mean,
sorry,
even
I've been up to date on those sort of.
Yeah, it's a blessing. You're not missing out. So, yeah, but anyway, there was this young girl. I mean, she's like in her first video that she got famous in. She's like in this schoolgirl Catholic outfit, just gyrating and all this stuff. And she's still a teenager at that time.
Oh, Britney Spears.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. See the video. And
see,
so,
now that you say it, it's like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, sexualizing young children, that's been something that's been for a while.
Yeah.
Been something for a while.
So that's why I keep saying goal. I mean, they've kind of created this, you know, this quote anti-European, anti-white, anti-even Hebrew thing. And now I think it's kind of backfiring on them because you see, as we see these protests, these peaceful protests, there's people going all over the streets in London, throughout Europe and the US and all that. The world is turning against them, like in a very demonic way. I could be wrong, but that's just the way I view it. It's kind of like they created this golem, and now the world's collapsing on them.
Well, I think the main thing is, and going back to the topic here, the overwhelming support we see for Palestine.
Yeah.
I think the hearts of the matter can be easily seen in the supporters and how they reacted. There are massive videos of Muslims celebrating the terrorist attack against Israel, but I have yet to see a single video of Jews celebrating the attack against Gaza.
Well said.
So, and I've seen massive marches. Now, I have seen massive marches for Israel. So there has been on both sides, but not nearly in the numbers that I've seen in support support of Hamas. So that is another aspect to bear in mind. So I guess as we are navigating this, as you're dealing with people who you need to talk about this with, maybe if someone who is very vocal in your family and they're going down about this, simply ask them for clarification. Why do they support them? What grounds do they think it should be? Israel should not be there. What is the alternative that they are suggesting? I don't think they have these arguments. I was hoping to be able to hear these arguments from some people today. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't show up.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as those people that, let's call them the left, but really some of the right, this recent poll, I think IAP shared yesterday, even those like maybe a 15% of people on the right were also supporting Hamas or Palestine or whatever. Yeah, it's just a media reaction. Like if you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, regardless of who you are, eventually chances are that you're going to succumb to it. So, yeah, I mean, and the problem is that with these people, like Yuri Bezmenov warned decades ago, that they're beyond reproach. I mean, as soon as even if you just simply, calmly, lovingly ask them to provide one example or whatever it might be, they just flip out and take off like Muslims do. They just get angry and just run. So, I mean, I don't know how to approach these people, but I think it's important that we do. If you have any ideas on how you can approach someone that just like that, I mean, what do you do? How do you talk to them? How do you reach them?
That's a good question. It's hard because, again, if someone is that hard against it, sometimes it's better not to necessarily go straight to the point, but try to wiggle it in, approaching it softly in some ways, and in other ways, depending on who they are, it might be needed to just be blunt. It really depends upon the individual themselves.
Also, yeah,
so that's the real question. Like, for example, with Hamas, again, my stance is these Muslims do not care about their own lives. They don't really care. They actually look forward to death. I take the David Wood approach with it, which is if they're going to do this, we find what they value and make that the casualty, such as shooting the Quran or burning the Quran, doing something along the lines to what they truly value above their own lives. And in those cases, you're doing it peacefully. No one is getting hurt by it. The only property that you are destroying or disposing of is your own. And in the case of burning Quran, well, that is how the Quran is supposed to be respectfully destroyed anyway. So there's that aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again too. I was definitely an antagonist of you guys doing that, a proponent, an opponent. Okay, finally got it right. And an opponent of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just, yeah, I get it. I mean, I hadn't even heard David, kind of just look, guys. I mean, you can't give them an inch. You got to show them that their behavior is absurd. Was his argument? I think that's a good argument. It's good to expose how absurd their behavior is. Unfortunately, some people, as we're seeing now with the Hamas invasion of Israel, regardless of what they do, some people are just going to be against Christianity, against traditionalism, against the white Christian man, against the Europeans, against all these things they've been conditioned to hate, regardless of how evil the other side, the opponents, become. So I was more concerned that it wasn't really making as much difference as you guys were hoping. It was just more feeding fuel to the fire to give these Muslims an excuse to react, to protest. Like, see, aha, look at the infidels and what they're doing,
It works for a while until they realize they can stop. And that's one of the things that I've been very clear in each of the videos that I've put forth, that I've done something like that in. It's like, okay, here's how you stop me from ever doing this again. Here are the steps. I think the first burn the Quran video I did was just, hey, just, respect human life. That's all I ask. I just ask that you don't constantly threaten to kill everyone. That's it. You do that, I won't burn the Quran again. That will be a reason I won't do it again. Simple enough. Shoot the Quran was, of course, in response to Hamas's attack, and it's a pretty powerful deterrent. Again, these people do not value their own lives, but they do value the Quran above their own lives. So if they think, oh, my action, and you need to be very clear about this in every part of the video, if my action leads to the Quran being destroyed, that is a sin. And they do not want to do that. If that's removed and their action is just killing a bunch of Jews, well, that's actually more righteous according to Islam than not. And if they die doing it, well, that's an instant trip to heaven. So they get a huge bonus doing that. So it's knowing the psyche, knowing when to use shock and awe tactics and when not to. I know we talked about him earlier, Autumn. I've had wonderful conversations with him. It has been fantastic every time he's joined. We've had good conversations. If every Muslim acted like he did and had good conversations and was willing to think through things, there would be no need to use the shock and awe. There'd be no need to take that extreme step in order to do that. But it's just when they are using such tactics that are so horrendous that it must be stopped. And this is a nonviolent solution that is much more powerful than them losing their lives.
Yeah, I guess that's why you're not seeing many Muslims right now. I think they know that they have nothing real to say, and that by someone like you, they would be called out. They wouldn't be allowed to get away with any dawah. Or Piers Morgan, even he was trying to call him out, but he's still trying to keep his network running. So I think he's still kind of walking a fine line. But with you, you're not going to allow it. So,
by the way, Jessica, if you want to talk about it, you're more than welcome to come up and give me your thoughts on them. Your thoughts on it. You're thinking that it's not going to stop anything. All it's doing is lowering me to their level. Well, no, it's not, because I'm not killing anyone. If you haven't noticed, I have not murdered anyone, so I'm definitely not on their level. Just to be aware of that, I don't find innocent people in order to cut their heads off or attack. And, sorry, I guess you're leaving now.
Or charge people 50% of their income just to stay alive.
Yeah, I don't say go conquer the entire world. That seems odd. Okay, well, whatever. Maybe that's just a coincidence. I specifically called you out and invited you up, and then I gotta leave all of a sudden, considering those are your first couple of comments I've seen from you. And you don't have to apologize for disagreeing with me. Just for clarification, if you're watching this in the future, you don't have to apologize. You ask my wife, it's okay to disagree with me. It's okay. So, again, anyone that is in the chat, I'll go ahead and invite you guys on up to step on up, join us, talk about the subject, whatever you guys think about it. Give me your opinions.
Yeah, there was something that you said earlier, but like I said, my brain just not working like it used to, so I'm having a brain fart.
We have agreement here, so that, pay the jizya to stay alive. Yep, it's very similar to the mafia in multiple ways. And again, the way they got rid of the mafia is, well, it was a bit of a bloody situation. A lot of death. So,
have you had much success with Muslims as far as reaching them and breaking through that barrier and their dawah and all that?
I've had a couple. I've had a lot more Muslims reach out to me, but a lot of the work I do, I don't see because, like, for example, I get to hear, well, from you, I get to hear, but like the people in the live chat, they might watch my video once and then that's it. I don't have a conversation with them. it's odd whenever I do get the rare message saying, hey, thank you very much. This is why. I've had a lot from ex-Muslims saying, hey, I wish there was someone like you around, when they convince me of this garbage.
Very cool.
So I get a lot more of that than anything else.
That's awesome to hear.
So, and that's always uplifting to hear. It's not required, but it's always nice to hear. You see the end of it. So let's see here.
I just remember what it was. It was just the whole, just recently I've heard this rhetoric from, again, I'm going to use the label of the left, even though I hate the left-right, that tactic. But yeah, basically they were completely anti-Jewish, like before all this started, like so to speak, before all this started, before this Palestinian invasion of Israel, before October 7th. There's a good way to put it. And which was a surprise to me, because I always assumed, again, like from my perspective, my recent perspective, people that are conditioned by mass media are products of Hebrew conditioning. Now I'm realizing, again, that's not completely true, especially with regards to the 21st century. But regardless, someone like that, why would they be hating Jews like that? Like basically sounding like a Nazi. Any ideas?
No, I'd say that the conceived notion to begin with, I think, might be weak. If you're thinking that, well, they're all controlled by Jews, they're all controlled, I think that might be a false assumption to go on. So I'd have to re-examine that from the ground up.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, because if the conclusion is not, if it's not acting the way you would expect it to act, then something must have been a false conclusion, and I would go back even to my groundwork and say, okay, this is a foundation. Was I incorrect on this foundation that eventually led to that conclusion?
Or let me ask you: have you noticed? I don't know how much media you watch, but have you observed media that's like anti-Semitic, like it's anti-Jewish or whatever?
A lot of the coverage, I would say, has been extremely
Oh yeah,
anti-Semitic.
I mean
a lot of
coverage.
the news, I wouldn't say, like, if you're talking about like cartoons or that stuff, I stay away from most of that nowadays.
Yeah.
Just because I don't find it to be productive in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely say that the majority of social media, the majority of the coverage has been pro-Islam, anti-Jew.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, I was just wondering before that what media was like. Like I said, I don't really have a beat on that. I kind of avoid it myself these days, but
I'd say it's been
anyway.
that way for quite some time, actually.
Oh, really?
The
Okay.
more I see, the more I realize that Islam has been,
Mm.
even going back to 9/11, not long after 9/11, they were soft pedaling it.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll keep an eye
So it's something that's been there for a long time, and I don't think it's been as apparent, but it's definitely come to the forefront in this case.
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, they're very subtle at the beginning, and then as soon as the culture starts getting a hold and seems to adopting that idea, they seem to just kind of crank it up, like what we're seeing now in the 21st century with, this outright pro-pagan, infatuation. I mean, it's not even anti-Christian anymore. It's just the next step. It's just outright being openly satanic.
Yep.
Anyway.
So we do have an interesting comment here saying that the Muslim world is mostly guilty of what they accuse Israel of for the past 1,400 years. And yes, actually, that's interesting, because if you go to like any Dawaist or any Muslim that's out there, a lot of times you see a lot of the projection. I get a lot of that in my comment section. That I'm just doing this for the money, or I'm just doing this to make others feel bad, or I'm just doing this, the real reason I'm doing this is because of XYZ. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. But it's something that's consistent. We had an opportunity to go in a mosque not too long ago. My wife did. She observed their quote unquote service, or whatever you want to call it. A lot of it's anti-Christian. The majority of it was anti-Christian. And then you hear from them accusing of us in the churches doing the same thing. So how much of that is actual projection based upon what they think we're doing, which I have, outside of special occasions like the Seek and Share Truth conference or any other conference I've been to, I don't think I've ever heard a pastor go up on stage and talk about Islam. Not a single time. What about you? You?
Me?
Did I lose my guess? Yes, you.
Oh, sorry. No, not at all.
So
I thought you were talking to the audience. My apologies.
well, they can't speak back to me.
Fair enough.
Although I've invited them too. It's not my fault. I mean,
Fair
I've given them an opportunity. But yeah, so yeah, it says my church never talks about Islam. Yeah, they don't. I think that is a mistake, as they should deal with Islam because it is obviously a growing issue, but is not, you don't have a sermon based on it. And this was just a regular everyday sermon. It wasn't something that was unique. This message that was given, it's like, no, this is what they think of us. This is what they think we're doing. And it's like, we don't really care. It's like the ex that thinks that you're always obsessed about them in every way, shape, or form. And it's like, no, I have not thought of you in years. But they have thought of you, so they think about it.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, about with those Islam-dominated nations, those parishes, do they speak about it in their communities or not? I wonder if there's anybody following right now that lives in those communities that would have experience with that.
Well, quite a bit of the Quran is dedicated to anti-Christian propaganda, to put it plainly. So it's not really a surprise that would bleed through to what they're talking about in their congregations. So that is an aspect that I've definitely seen. Yes, that projection, like you're doing this. And again, I get that not too long ago. I had that short that was a Muslim saying that we don't know who wrote, the Gospels. We don't know who wrote them. We actually have no clue. And it's like, no, it's pretty clear. The Gospel of John is written according to John. It's pretty clear about that part. And he goes on there. He says, nope, you lie. You're lying to me. And that comes out of not really that surprising, but we don't know who wrote the Quran. I know Muslims will claim, well, it was Allah, but no, we don't actually know necessarily who wrote the bits and pieces of the Quran down. And just the companions, they didn't sign their name on the bones or the leaves or whatever random article they grabbed when Muhammad gave his revelations.
You know what I found fascinating is it seems just recently, before October 7th, these Muslim apologists were, just like I just mentioned with media and the culture, just being pro-satanic. It seemed like the Muslim apologists, instead of denying, they started putting things out that were like, yeah, well, this is Islam. This is what we do. This is what we believe. Accept it. No, that wasn't their behavior with that, with the perfect plan guy. She was 9, I mean, their reaction was quickly like, hey, can't speak the truth.
Oh! She was 9 years old!
Speak about that.
It's awesome.
And after they are definitely.
And we're proud of that, yeah?
Well, they hated it. They were ready to ambush the guy. They had the police, I'm assuming, arrested him to protect him. I hope that was the thing. Anyway. Yeah, but it seems like it's now just a revelation of the method, that they're just, well, you know what, that's where we are. The society at large has accepted us as this group that they accept, that they show solidarity with. They're defending us. And so now we can just be honest and reveal the truths about Islam. I mean, like we were saying, again, the culture is not all that similar. All that different. They're both sexualizing children. They're both pro-murder. They're both, they love sensationalizing the macabre. They both want a depopulation. They both have a depopulation agenda. It just so happens. They both hate Christ. They both don't mind the satanic, even though they won't be honest about it. I mean, so yeah, I guess it just all these similarities. I don't know. It's disturbing. I don't know what to say about it, but it's.
No, I think this comment puts it pretty well as far as the wider Christian audience. Most Christians don't know anything about Islam. And I think that's a major disadvantage. I think that's been their strong suit for years, is that they can lie about whatever they wanted to, and that is clearly allowed in Islam and even commanded in some cases. But now that that's been put out there more and more, we are seeing it be just shown for what it is, shown for the lies that it is, for the just the absolute fraud.
Just pure evil. And I've asked like David about this, about, as far as the international community, as I say, the United Nations, aren't they supposed to be the police now? So why have they not been putting an end to Islam or mitigating it?
Well, that's a good question. Why haven't they? Because they definitely recently they're too scared of being called Islamophobic. They're too scared of stepping out and actually stepping against it and saying what's wrong. I mean, I've got massive number of Christians who have told me that what I'm doing is wrong, challenging Islam is wrong. We should never try to offend anyone ever. And then my response is, Jesus definitely didn't see that memo. Yeah. Or Elijah, for that matter. But yeah, it's just in the wider scale of things, it's a bit of an issue. So just here a couple more points real quick to hit, because no one stepped up. None of these people I invited on Twitter stepped up. And, well, so be it. They had their opportunity.
Can I add to what you just said?
Go ahead.
I think it's extremely important that, people realize that, especially Christians. We have a sermon about the casting out or the sending out of demons into the swine of legion. Even Christ himself named the demons before he sent them out. Yeah, I mean, the truth is our sword. Isn't it better to cut the problem at the root, instead of having this big problem spread and then trying to react afterward? And the way to do that is to be honest, like, hey, you know what? This is inappropriate. Hey, you know what? This is not good. And if they continue, then you know what you need to do. You need to cut off, pluck out, and so on. But if we're not doing that, if we're not taking that first step, we're not, rebuking sin, then yeah, we're going to have what we have now. But I don't think it's too late. I think we still have the opportunity to speak the truth. And shame on those communities that make us feel like, we shouldn't, that confound us from doing that. A very fundamental, necessary Christian thing to stop evil.
Yeah, I think we have a comment here. It was a huge mistake that pastors do not talk about Islam. Yes, I think, that was kind of the point of the Seek and Share Truth conference that we did earlier on this year, is to shed light on it. We also attended earlier on, before that, we attended a ministry to Muslim conference up in Michigan that I thought was very powerful, that was able to establish quite a bit. We have been working alongside some churches to try to establish this, and we might even do another conference next year. I would like to see a bunch of conferences across the United States, all focused on reaching Muslims, how to deal with them, how to effectively do it, and not be caught off guard when Muslims say, well, you guys worship three gods, or you're just a bunch of pagans or anything like that. And that's such projection considering that their founder was a pagan. Just putting that out there.
Bottom line.
Simple, easy. So, but you know what? I've run into a lot of issues with the churches being motivated into this. A lot of them don't see this as an issue unless they are absolutely surrounded. They do not see this as being a real issue. Now, there are exceptions to that. But you guys in live chat, Christians, bring this up to your pastors. Bring it up at your churches. Get people to know about these issues that people don't get caught off guard. They don't go to, Muslims don't go to black church and say, you see, Christianity is the white man religion. Come follow a white prophet who had black slaves instead. yeah, let's do that. It's like, no, okay. But that lie works. That lie works because the truth is not known, because we do not talk about this openly. I mean, here on YouTube, you do have people speaking about it, and we are a growing community, and there's more and more, but I'd like to see this talked about more in churches for the number to grow so we are well equipped. And that's what the pastor's job is. The pastor is to equip his flock so that they can deal with this sort of stuff, not be caught off guard and led astray by wolves.
Yeah. And those already have Twitter accounts and TikTok accounts and all that. Please get active in those two. In fact, Elon Musk is now providing internet service to Hamas. So let's get vocal. This is ridiculous.
Oh boy. Yeah. So yeah. Black Hebrew Israelites is another issue. Vocab does a lot of work there. That is an interesting combination between them and Islam, between the two. They say I don't have to worry about that yet. I just focus on Islam, and that is my primary. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I do have a couple of last mentions here real quick. Tomorrow morning at 6:30 p.m. EDT, I will be joining John on his new channel, where we will be having a nice coffee conversation that shouldn't be political or a bit of an issue. We're going to be talking sci-fi, so it shouldn't be a big issue. But it'll be a bunch of fun. It'll be a bit more relaxed, a bit more enjoyable than hard topics or topics people are extremely passionate about. It's AM, not PM. My wife reminded me. It's AM. I got to get up early. So it's Coffee with John in the mornings at 6:30 a.m. EDT. So if you guys want to do that, actually at the end of this live stream, it'll redirect you over there. So you guys can go ahead and check that on out.
Cool.
There's not a link in the chat yet. I will go ahead and put that for people who... Thank you for reminding me about that. I'll just roll on over. We'll actually be talking Stargate on this one. Stargate SG-1. So completely different topics from this. Just absolutely night and day.
Well,
it should be a lot of fun.
Not with the tangent I took it to, but yeah.
So it should be a lot of fun. We'll do a deep dive into that. It's all from a Christian perspective. So it should be a lot of fun. And the last thing I have to say, a special thank you to our members on Buy Me a Coffee. That is Sherwin. The members here on YouTube are Chicky, Shaky, Solitary Emmy, Professor Yeffel, Reasoned Answers. Thank you for supporting this channel. If you would like to join them, then go ahead and click that join button. But as always, remember, Jesus Christ is the only way into heaven. There is no other way, no other option, no false prophets. You can only get to heaven through the blood of the cross. May the Lord God Almighty guide you in every step that you take and give you the heart for the lost. Our desire is that everyone should come to know Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior and come to a full life in Him. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.